Jiao Jialong looked at my Fugue, amused, but he still took the 2 health potions. Seeing Jiao Jialong take the potions, my Fugus eyes lit up. He ate the pills I made. So happy. Jiao Jialong frowned. Your pill refining is so smelly. You really have inherited all the bad parts. My Fugue was puzzled. No, the family history says that our ancestors' pill refining was fragrant. Jiao Jialong couldn't help but laugh. You really are shameless as always. The laughter warmed my Fugus eyes. A blush spread across his cheeks. He smiled because of me. The little fox twitched his nose and said, Bad Long Long's smell is both happy and sad. What a strange demon. He then jumped onto Jiao Jialong's shoulder. His big tail rubbed against Jiao Jialong's face. Bad Long Long, why are you so sad? Jiao Jialong suddenly revealed an evil smile. Little guy, aren't you afraid it'll kill you? Why are you so close? The little fox shook his tail. You won't kill me. I can sense you don't have killing intent. Jiao Jialong looked at the little fox, his expression softened. You're a clever one. If Choo Choo was here, she would definitely like you. The little fox didn't understand. Who is Choo Choo? Jiao Jialong patted the little fox's head and said, Choo Choo is my good friend. Choo Choo and Jiao Jialong meet again. After 1,000 years, fate was fulfilled in the moment of their reunion. Jiao Jialong, seeing Zix's smooth fur, thought that Choo Choo would definitely like him. He couldn't help but treat 1111 even better. 1111 innocently asked, Is that sister your good friend? Jiao Jialong wasn't sure. He only said they needed to meet. 1111 suddenly jumped onto Jiao Jialong's head. My Fugue hurriedly told him to come down. Not just anyone can go on a dragon's head. 1111 didn't care. If that sister is your good friend, then I'm also your good friend. So, Brother Fugue and Big Flower Sister are your friends' friends. You can't be mean to them. Jiao Jialong felt that this little fox had a way of calming the chaos in his heart. My Fugue and Niu Dahua were already trembling as they huddled together, afraid that this demon might suddenly unleash his rage on them. Jiao Jialong reassured them. Whether Chujun is the person I'm looking for or not, I will let you leave safely. 1111 was also happy. That's right. Although you're dirty and smelly, I still don't think you're a bad dragon. These words caught Jiao Jialong's attention. Do I look very ugly now? My Fugue and Niu Dahua looked at him. You're not ugly, but you're extremely pale. You're so pale, anyone would be scared. Jiao Jialong lowered his head. My Fugue and Niu Dahua's eyes were wide. Jiao Jialong's body no longer had blood. He looked even more stern and cold. Only his dark eyes seemed dull. My Fugue's heart was pounding. This beauty is terrifying. I think I'm going to be bent by him. 1111 happily said, Bad Long Long is so beautiful. I really want to take a bite. Jiao Jialong looked at his own clothes. Choo Choo likes to see me in flowery clothes. I wish I had more flowery clothes. Suddenly, a strange sound came from behind them. Jiao Jialong frowned, annoyed. What a persistent soul. He turned towards the sound, telling my Fugue and the others to wait there. He'll be back soon. My Fugue worriedly told him to be careful. After Jiao Jialong left, my Fugue asked Niu Dahua, This guy should be a good demon, right? Should we still stay here? Niu Dahua was unconcerned. If he wanted to kill us, he would have done it already. 1111 also believed that Bad Long Long wasn't lying. What if he's really sister's friend? My Fugue had his doubts. This guy is probably quite old. How could little Choo Choo have such an old monster as a friend? Niu Dahua disagreed. Maybe they really are friends. He feels like he has many secrets. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet started shaking. Cracks appeared on the ground. My Fugue jumped onto Niu Dahua's back. What kind of demon is this? A tear appeared in the darkness. Yun Su took Chujun and burst out from the crack. My Fugue was overjoyed. Little Choo Choo. My little Choo Choo. He ran towards Chujun. 1111 couldn't wait either, and jumped into Chujun's arms. Sister, fragrant brother. 1111 missed you guys so much. The family of 3 were together, ignoring my Fugue. But my Fugue suddenly noticed something odd. Why is cousin carrying that strange object? Chu Jun was still getting kisses from the baby. 1111 sniffed. Sister, where did you go? My Fugue was also puzzled. How did you get dug up again? That was so fast. Chu Jun quickly grabbed my Fugue's hand. Let's get out of here. We've messed up again. Let's find Lao Wang and run. My Fugue was confused. He told Chu Jun that Lao Wang was already dead. Chu Jun was shocked. He's dead. My Fugue immediately began gossiping. It's not important whether Lao Wang is dead or not. Someone's looking for you. Your love rival. He's so handsome and dazzling. After speaking, my Fugue nervously watched Chu Jun's reaction. Chu Jun was confused. Why would a demon be after me? And a love rival? The expression on Yan Su's face turned dark. Suddenly, a man's voice came from nearby. Chu Jun felt as if he was waking up from a dream. Once, he had been afraid of sugar and also loved beauty, but he was willing to have his dragon scales broken for her. 3,000 years later, they met again. The female demon, who had made everyone tremble, was now madly in love. Just as Chu Jun was pondering how he had a love rival, Jiao Jialong's voice came from behind. Chu Chu. This voice caused Chu Jun's vision to blur. He stood there in disbelief. When he turned around, Jiao Jialong was right in front of him, holding a skull in his hand. His voice trembled. Is that you, Chu Chu? Chu Jun was thunderstruck. He stared at the familiar voice and unconsciously blurted out, Jiao Jiao. The Jiao Jialong he remembered wore a green robe. His eyes were like flowing light, perfectly matching the person in front of him, except now, those eyes were dark and dull. Hearing the word Jiao Jiao, Yan Su turned to look at Chu Jun. At that moment, he understood that the Jiao Jiao that had made Chu Jun lose control twice was this man in front of him. Chu Jun almost rushed to Jiao Jialong. It really is you, Jiao Jiao. The skull in Jiao Jialong's hand fell to the ground. She stared at Chu Jun, and didn't dare take a single step forward. Chu Chu, it's me. Chu Jun walked towards her quickly. Yan Su quickly stepped forward and supported her. Chu Jun pushed Yan Su's hand away, and continued to run towards Jiao Jialong. Yan Su stared at his empty hand. At that moment, he felt an invisible barrier form between him and Chu Jun. It seemed that the only events that mattered were between Chu Jun and this person. He was just an outsider. In a few seconds, Jiao Jialong was already in tears. Chu Chu, I'm sorry. I'm late. Chu Jun sobbed. He had never felt such a strong, heart-wrenching emotion. He held Jiao Jialong tightly. It's not late at all. It's so good that you're alive. My Jiao Jiao is alive. Looking at Jiao Jialong's empty eyes, she felt as if a knife was piercing her chest. This was the Jiao Jiao who loved beauty and feared sugar the most. She had become like this for her sake. Jiao Jialong shook her head. Chu Chu, don't say that. It's not your fault. While talking, Chu Jun opened her domain. Jiao Jiao, I have so much to tell you. The two of them disappeared in front of everyone. My Fugue was shocked. Where did little Chu Chu go? Yan Su was also lost. She opened her domain. She doesn't want us to see her reunion with her old friend. My Fugue rolled his eyes. So little Chu Chu really is friends with him. Niu Dahua agreed, and not just ordinary friends. My Fugue looked at Yan Su's expression. Cousin, what's wrong? You don't seem to be in a good mood. Niu Dahua understood. What is love, if not a promise of life and death? 1111 jumped onto Yan Su's shoulder and asked. Fragrant brother, are you having tummy aches? Yan Su refused to admit it. Nonsense, why would I have tummy aches? 1111 didn't believe it. He looked at Yan Su worriedly. Sister and Bad Long Long are enjoying their time together. I can see that fragrant brother is unhappy. Yan Su immediately exploded. Nonsense. I am not. I don't care. 1111 retreated, looking pitiful. Fragrant brother, your anger is bursting. Niu Dahua and my Fugue shivered. He clearly cared. Yan Su calmed himself down and asked, Wang Xizhou is dead. My Fugue said, yes, and the other 16 idiots were also killed by little Chu Chu's friends. Chu Jun probably needed some time, so they couldn't step into that place for now. Now that Wang Xizhou was dead, they needed to find someone else to take his place. Yan Su was enduring so much. His wife was having a reunion with a former lover in a domain, while he had to worry about the affairs of this place. Mai Fugui asked Yan Su if he needed help. Yan Su's face was full of unhappiness. He just said, no need. Mai Fugui was confused. What's wrong with cousin? Niu Dahua sighed. It's a three-person love story. Being excluded is hard to bear. 1111 was curious. What are you talking about? I can't understand it. The female demon hid in a domain and reminisced with her former lover, while the demon lord outside was jealous. First, his son. He then got angry at the demon king, and called out his demon minions to investigate his love rival. Finally, he had to swallow his anger and clean up his mess. He watched as Chu Jun opened a demon domain and pushed everyone out. The elements exploded, but he didn't utter a word. He can't let the news of Chu Jun out yet. He returned to the space. He directly threw the Star Demon King on the ground. Stay put. I have no time to fight you right now. Figure something out. The Star Demon King angrily yelled at Yan Su. How would I know what to do? I'm just a child. Yan Su's expression darkened, emitting an intense pressure. Do you want to experience endless darkness again? The Star Demon King immediately cowered, quickly agreeing. Okay. I'll figure something out. In his heart, he secretly thought. Regardless of the species, the most terrifying being is a vinegar-drinking man. After dealing with the Star Demon King, Yan Su released the others. Does anyone know where Chu Jun is? Zhu Qiu's heart sank when he saw Yan Su's expression. Who bullied him to such a degree? Yan Su asked directly, do you know a dragon? Zhu Qiu answered vaguely. I know he is one of the demon generals under the banner of Han Nong. Yan Su became somewhat understanding, so, it's that dragon. The one who once served as his spirit guide. Zhu Qiu noticed Yan Su's unusual expression, fearing he'd lose control. He warned him, don't go crazy. Han Nong is Chu Jun's closest friend. Your relationship can't compare. If you kill him, Chu Jun will definitely turn against you, and you will be enemies forever. Yan Su chuckled, killing him. I'm happy for him if we meet again. I'm just happy for him. As he spoke, he didn't realize he'd lost control, and returned to the persona of the Demon King of the underworld. Zhu Qiu broke out in cold sweat. Happy? You look like a resentful wife, with him going to kill you written all over your face. The Demon King stared at Zhu Qiu. You're right. My relationship with him means nothing. Zhu Qiu was so overwhelmed by his aura that he kept backing away, but continued to try to persuade him. It's not like you have no feelings for him. You even have a child together. Yan Su ignored him, muttering, what does his old feelings have to do with me? Zhu Qiu thought, forget it, I'm done. In a certain space, Chu Jun wiped the tears from Jia Jialong's eyes, comforting him, don't cry. It's hard to see each other again, so don't cry. She pinched his face, let me take a good look at my Jia Jia. Jia Jialong asked blankly, am I not as beautiful as before? Chu Jun smiled gently, my Jia Jia is beautiful no matter what. I like you just the way you are. Chu Jun suddenly remembered something. I have something for you, Jia Jia. Jia Jialong was curious. What is it? Chu Jun quickly took out the bamboo dragon eye. Your eye. Jia Jialong was pleasantly surprised. It's really my eye. Chu Jun remembered that Jia Jialong hated it when others touched his things, so she reassured him. I've cleaned it for you. Don't dislike it, Jia Jialong repeatedly said. I wouldn't dislike anything Chu Chu gave me. Jia Jialong put the bamboo dragon eye back in his eye socket. The eye can see. When he opened his eyes, Jia Jialong's eyes had their former sparkle again. Chu Chu, I can see. Chu Jun looked at Jia Jialong and said, it'll help you get back the other eye and your dragon soul. It won't look good. Until I find your left eye, please bear with it. As she spoke, Chu Jun reached out and covered Jia Jialong's left eye. Jia Jialong was alarmed. Chu Chu, what are you doing? 1,000 years ago, he served as a spirit guide. 1,000 years later, she'll retrieve his dragon soul, and give him her color-changing power. Their relationship transcended love, even with their childish faith. When Chu-jun's hands approached his eyes, Jia Jialong panicked. Chu, what are you doing? Jia Jialong wanted to pull Chu-jun's hand away, but Chu-jun's voice sounded resolute. I, Chu-jun, ask Han Nong to witness this. Seeing the color of Chu-jun's right eye fading, Jia Jialong cried out, no. As Chu-jun slowly lowered her hand, the world he saw gradually lost color, leaving only black and white. Jia Jialong cried and scolded her. Chu, you're such a big idiot. Didn't you say you would find my eye for me? Why did you give me yours instead? Jia Jialong's eyes filled with emotion, intensely staring at Chu-jun. Chu-jun comforted him happily. Just use it first. Once we find yours, you can return it to me. It won't be too late. Jia Jialong joked, you better hurry up or else it will be gone. Chu-jun chuckled, I've already given you my heart too. Moo, who was on the side, couldn't take it anymore. All right, you too. Your lovey-dovey talk is almost enough. Only now did Jia Jialong notice Moo. Little Moo, you're still here. Moo looked proud. Of course, I'm the first to find the master. Jia Jialong gave Moo a good once-over. How could you be just a soul? Where is your main body? He exclaimed, Chu, did you swallow Moo's egg? Chu-jun explained, Moo's body was too weak, so I'm keeping it in my primordial spirit to heal. Jia Jialong finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chu-jun watched them argue for a while and felt that it was getting late. She told Jia Jialong to go out first. They could talk more after they left the space. Jia Jialong suddenly thought of something. Those people outside, are they your friends? Chu-jun happily agreed. Then, she asked Jia Jialong, did Chu go out before seeing you? Jia Jialong didn't get along with Zhu Q. He wondered why Chu-jun suddenly brought up Zhu Q. Chu-jun told him, Zhu Q is now Yun Sus General. Moo interrupted, that ungrateful bird was captured and had his feathers plucked, and was locked up for days. Jia Jialong shuddered at the thought of having his feathers plucked. Then, he laughed loudly. Good. That ungrateful wretch deserves it. Chu-jun instructed Jia Jialong to cover up his aura when he went out so that he wouldn't be recognized by Zhu Q. Jia Jialong smiled and agreed, and then asked if his appearance had become somewhat similar to Chu-jun. Chu-jun chuckled, does it look like me? Jia Jialong thought the two looked alike. Like they were made from the same mold. Speaking of my Renping, Chu-jun suddenly wanted to return to her old residence to set a fire, burning 70 to 80 paper dolls to send to her. Jia Jialong teased, how about 70 or 80 handsome men? Chu-jun laughed. You're right, I almost forgot the old matchmaker's special taste. Chu-jun walked away with Jia Jialong while talking and laughing. Moo floated next to Chu-jun. In that moment, everything seemed to have gone back 1,000 years. On the other side, Mai Fuguei and Niu Dahua were chatting with Kei Zigua. What's taking them so long? Why haven't they come out yet? Niu Dahua remained calm, let's wait. 1111 seemed a little anxious. Why hasn't Big Sister come out yet? But it's so nice that Dragon Brother is Big Sister's friend. Mai Fuguei teased him, you're happy now. You have forgotten about the time when your big brother bullied you. 1111 ate melon seeds and said, it's not Juang's fault. It was me who bit him first. Besides, he's pretty and I like him. Speaking of this, Mai Fuguei suddenly started daydreaming, Dragon Brother is really good looking. If only. As he thought about it, Mai Fuguei unknowingly started drooling. 1111, confused, called Niu Dahua. Dahua, what's wrong with silly Fuguei? How would Niu Dahua know what Mai Fuguei was thinking? He just said, looks like he's gone mad. A scheming green tea dragon appeared. Seeing that she was about to lose her great beauty, she intentionally acted like a distressed damsel. Mai Fuguei was fantasizing about the beautiful Jia Jialong. Suddenly, a rock hit his head. Mai Fuguei yelled angrily, who threw that at me? He looked down and saw a skull rolling to his feet, staring at him with hollow eyes. Mai Fuguei felt that the skull looked familiar. Niu Dahua also felt that it looked familiar. Isn't it the one you cut before? Mai Fuguei firmly shook his head, no, the previous skull was rounder. This one has a hole in it. They are not the same. The soul inside the skull was speechless. He cursed Jia Jialong and Mai Fuguei under his breath. My Fugue sighed, well, this skull is unlucky. I think I'll take it home and make soup. Whoever makes me unhappy, I'll invite him for some skull soup. Nyo Dahua warned. Shivering, Fugue, you're a bit twisted. My head hurts. My Fugue said, you unfilial grandson. And you want to make a soup out of my skull. Lei Pai suddenly noticed with surprise. Xiang brother is out. He waved at Yan Su. Xiang brother, don't be afraid. I will catch you. When Yan Su came out, he didn't see Chu Jun. His face was cold, and he threw the Star Demon King away. 1111 rushed into Yan Su's arms, acting like a spoiled child. Yan Su asked, hasn't Chu Jun come back yet? 1111 said, Big sister is chatting with her old friend. Yan Su's expression darkened further. Chat. She has so many friends she could see instead of me. 1111 suddenly noticed Yan Su's mood. With wide eyes, he asked. Xiang brother, are you upset? Do you need a hug? Yan Su said gently, I'm fine. It's your imagination. Let's go out. He then walked out with 1111. Nyo Dahua immediately understood, Yan Su is clearly jealous. 1111 knew that Yan Su was upset, and comforted him, Xiang brother, don't be sad. Big sister won't abandon you. She just went to see an old friend. Yan Su remained stubborn. I'm not sad. It's all your imagination. 1111 remained resolute, it's not. I can sense things accurately. As they spoke, Chu Jun's voice rang out. Little cousin, where are you going? Yan Su looked up and saw Chu Jun and Jia Long walking hand in hand, looking like an intimate couple. However, when he met Chu Jun's gaze, his aura dropped. Chu Jun, what did you do to yourself? Chu Jun knew she couldn't hide the eye issue from Yan Su. It's nothing, don't worry. Jia Long saw Yan Su's expression immediately. Is this guy jealous? Instantly, he started provoking Yan Su. He leaned his chin on Chu Jun's shoulder, hugging her. Chu, is this your new friend? Introduce us. Chu Jun didn't seem to sense the tension, and calmly began to introduce them. He is Yan Su, the son of the rich. This is Jia Long, my friend through thick and thin. Yan Su was speechless. Friend through thick and thin. Does his younger cousin not have a status? He looked at Jia Long with animosity. He recalled how Chu Jun used her own flesh and blood to smooth the spirit wood so that it wouldn't be damaged. Now she gave her color-changing power to the dragon. Chu Jun, you're so affectionate. Jia Long noticed all the subtle emotions of Yan Su, but Chu Jun was still calm and indifferent. He sighed inwardly. After 1,000 years, she's still so dense. Then, he enthusiastically extended his hand to Yan Su. Nice to meet you, cousin. At the Jinyao Temple, Qin Q was being punished. After being beaten 50 times, his buttocks were a bloody mess. How could Master be so heartless? How can he treat us like that? You're too blind. You knew Yan Su is Master, but didn't tell us. He Qing scolded him, you deserved it for being so careless. Even losing the map, Qian Q suddenly thought, the little fox by Chu Jun's side, could it be the little young Master? He Qing gave him a look, what do you think? Then, Qian Q muttered, could it be that Master helped Chu Jun so many times, because he is related to the little young Master? Last time, he even endured the backlash of the anti-world force to help. Chu Jun, I really don't understand. He Qing sighed. Why else? Because Chu Jun is the one her child is obsessed with. He didn't say this out loud. He just asked Qian Q, are you very afraid of Chu Jun? At the mention of Chu Jun, Qian Q became timid. If it weren't for him, would my tail be plucked? It's a good thing he is already dead. He Qing approached Qian Q. I have 2 pieces of big news for you. Our little master has finally found his mother, and that is Chu Jun, and now Chu Jun is reborn as Chu Jun. As soon as he finished speaking, someone from the Jinyao Temple came to report. Princess Chu Jun and the others have returned. The sudden influx of information made Qian Q hide behind He Qing. He Qing, I'm scared. He Qing turned and patted Qian Q's shoulder. Don't lose your composure. Don't embarrass Master. Qian Q cried loudly. He Qing, please, wait for me. Don't leave me alone. On the surface, he was calm and composed, But his heart was filled with jealousy. Even though his wife wasn't gentle, he still helped his wife behind the scenes. After coming out of the space, Jiao Long bought 13 sets of clothes. Chu Jun, with a black and white robe, went back to the Jinyao Temple with Jiao Long and others. The Jinyao Temple was in shock when they heard Wang Saiju's group had died, but most people admired Chu Jun and her group. Mai Fugui was happy. Little Chu, see, we're famous now. But Chu Jun knew that the days to come wouldn't be so peaceful. Mai Fugui was confused. Why? We've made a great contribution. Chu Jun smiled. Someone in the palace doesn't want us to achieve anything. Chu Mingxuan's expression was not good. Wang Saiju's group was his and Chu Mingya's spies. Now that they were gone, it was a great loss to them. Chu Mingxuan was terrified of Chu Jun, that she killed them all. He thought, if I can't control her, she'll become a great threat. He turned to his subordinate, and told him to investigate Chu Jun's plans. Okay, sir. The news about Chu Jun has already spread. Princess Chu is mighty. Mai Fugui is mighty. From now on, let's see who dares to bully us. Mai Fugui, feeling so pleased, stood in the middle of the crowd and basked in the attention. Chu Jun, looking annoyed, walked out of the crowd. She put the newly bought clothing on Jiao Long. Just when Chu Jun and the others were planning to sneak away, she bumped into a chest. The cold aura brushed her face. Little cousin. Yan Su's tone was icy. Where are you going in such a hurry? 1111 looked confused. Big sister, can't you see me? Chu Jun gently touched Six's head, asking Yan Su to take care of him. 1111 understood. Big sister wants to leave me to see her pretty brother. Chu Jun smiled. I'll bring the pretty brother to play with you in a couple of days. Yan Su's voice became even colder. Come home tonight. I need to talk to you. After saying this, he turned to leave, his tone full of suppressed anger. 1111 pouted. Bad sister. You don't want me just because you have a pretty brother. Chu Jun felt Yan Su's anger and murmured, this fox is becoming more and more temperamental. Forget it. I'll go buy some clothes for Jiao first. After Chu Jun left, the Demon King appeared in the Lanyu courtyard, looking annoyed. He Qing pushed open the door and felt that something was off. He carefully asked, Master, was this trip smooth? Yan Su replied absently, yes. He Qing was confused. If it was smooth, why was he in a bad mood? He quickly said, congratulations Master on retrieving your power. Yan Su said flatly, I didn't retrieve it. I gave it to him. He Qing was shocked, Master, that's your power. He gave away 1/10 of his cultivation. Yan Su didn't say anything more on the matter, and simply asked He Qing to keep a close eye on the th floor. If someone asked about the origin of the th floor, He Qing should handle it. He Qing was confused. Isn't the th floor a brothel? Yan Su explained, the master of the th floor is the demon lord of the west, Han Nong. Chu Jun will go there often. He Qing was excited. It's him. He's actually still alive. Chu Jun must be so happy. Yan Su slammed his water cup on the table, immediately chilling the room. He Qing realized he'd said something wrong. Could Chu Jun be in a relationship with that dragon? He thought his master might be cheated on. Yan Su said to himself, shatter his dragon bones, his dragon soul, cut him off from any possible way back. He Qing wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Master, you're right. That demon lord, Han Nong, is probably no good. Yan Su didn't say anything more, and instead instructed He Qing to buy a gift that women would like, nothing too valuable. The little fox was too pitiful. Let his father take care of the little fox, while he goes to meet his secret. He took a big lick of the lollipop, and threw it back to Hao Zhen. Qing Man happily ate his favorite lollipop. In the th floor, Jiao Long finally put on his brand new, flower-patterned clothes and asked Chu Jun, am I pretty? Chu Jun smiled brightly. Very beautiful. It'd be even better with a golden crown on your head. Jiao Long pouted and went closer to Chu Jun, buy it for me. Chu Jun lifted Jiao Long's chin. Bye. Nanji cried with emotion on the side. Congratulations, Master, you've finally found your love. Only then did Chu Jun notice Nanji. Chu Jun asked Jiao Long, who is he? Jiao Long instructed Nanji, from now on, your master is only Chu Chu. Nanji happily agreed, but Chu Jun bluntly said, you raise your people yourself. I'll only raise you. Jiao Long introduced Nanji. I specially chose him for you. Don't you want him? Chu Jun started observing Nanji. Nanji blushed, and a furry tail peeked out. Chu Jun's heart leaped with joy. He hugged Nanji. A fluffy tail. And such delicate skin and flesh. Nanji shyly said, if it wasn't for Master saving me, I wouldn't be alive. Jiao Long fed a grape to Chu Jun. Don't you like his tail, Chu Chu? It's good for keeping you warm. I can find you a better one later. Chu Jun didn't seem interested. Well, see. Although Chu Jun thought Nanji's tail wasn't bad, when it came to tails, 1111 and his little cousins were the best. Especially his cousin's tail. Jiao Long told Nanji to leave. Nanji felt a sense of loss. Jiao Long naturally noticed that Yan Su wasn't ordinary to Chu Jun, and Chu Jun was uninterested in others' tales. He started inquiring about Yan Su. Is his cousin also like that? Now, is Chu Chu your focus? Chu Jun rolled his eyes. He's a fox. Don't try anything funny like you did in the past. Jiao Long sighed dramatically. You only see the new love and forget the old. You're already protecting him. Chu Jun absent-mindedly sipped his tea. Mu Mu's shadow appeared. Jiao, you're asking for it. Teasing my little cousin. Jiao Long was more curious. You two are protecting him so much. I'll go find out tomorrow. Chu Jun started to talk business. Do you have any news about the others? Hearing this, Jiao Long said, that guy is too insidious. He forced me into a contract after you died. The others should be the same. After meeting Jiao Long, Chu Jun's memories started to return. He only remembered that Jiao Long was far away. Chu Jun asked if he knew who was nearby. After a moment, Jiao Long said, Chobi Guo. Chu Jun remembered that name. One of the 8 demon lords, the master of mountains and rivers, San Men. Jiao Long looked sad. He trapped me right in front of my eyes. My soul and blood turned into a light, and returned to the mountains and rivers. Tears streamed down Jiao Long's face. That guy trapped me first. Was he looking down on me? Chu Jun comforted Jiao Long. Will find him, and let you ask him yourself. Jiao Long said through his tears, I'm going to do more than ask. Others were also trapped. Little cutie, what's your name? 1111 said helplessly, my name is 1111. The ladies laughed even harder. So adorable. My Fugue gave a Da a Chinquan bag, saying it was a specialty from the demon realm. He told him to give the bones to the kitchen so they can wash and dry them. A Da thought my Fugue had gotten more treasures for the baby again, but my Fugue said, my dad has been scolding those old officials lately, so grind these bones into powder, and give them bone ash eggs. Young master, what a great idea. A Da exclaimed, I'll go do it. After giving the orders, my Fugue noticed that 1111, who was eating candy, was still unhappy. 1111 said, I miss sister and brother Xiang. They don't play with me anymore. My Fugue sympathized. They are being too much. Well, break up with them for a day. He then offered to introduce 1111 to the old ancestors, the single mountain and single sea. 1111 was confused. Who are they? My Fugue said proudly, they are the most flirtatious people from 1,000 years ago. Let's go. Brother will take you to visit them. Meanwhile, the skulls in the Chinquan bag were fuming. My Fugue, you little brat, you're done. I'm really angry. The oldest female demon plays chess with the demon emperor. The demon emperor not only fought back, but made her cry. He vented all the frustration. He vented all of the bottled up anger. The female demon still cried, demanding a tale. In the deep of the night, Yan Su's eyes shifted, looking out. A gust of wind blew open the door, mixed with the smell of alcohol. As soon as Yan Su closed the door, he looked at the window. Chu Jun, face flushed, was climbing over the window. Seeing Yan Su, he directly greeted him. Cousin, I'm home. Yan Su sighed. He felt Chu Jun was like a playful, drunk fairy. Afraid to go through the main door, he climbed the window. Chu Jun sat on the window sill, swaying and whining. It's so high, cousin. I'm going to fall. Help me. Yan Su, with a dark expression, picked him up. Chu Jun was delighted. I'm flying. Yan Su coldly whispered, was it tasty? Chu-jun mumbled, it was good. Yun-su's gaze grew colder. How good? Good enough to not want to return home. Chu-jun was still immersed in his happiness. People are more beautiful than flowers. My Jiao Jiao is both good-looking and wise. Before he finished speaking, Yun-su angrily threw him onto the bed. Hearing this, Yun-su's temper flared. How much did you drink, Chu-jun? Chu-jun whimpered. Yun-su, you hurt me. Did you do it on purpose? He started poking at the headboard. It'll poke your eyes, poke your nose, and make you not so cold. Are you scared? Yun-su stood by the bed, his face dark. It was obvious that Chu-jun couldn't be reasoned with. He looked at the muttering Chu-jun, his head spinning. The dissatisfaction towards Chu-jun and the jealousy of Jiao Jiao long surged in his heart. Chu-jun suddenly sensed something. Yun-su had already pushed him down onto the bed. But Chu-jun didn't realize what was happening and looked at Yun-su with a confused expression. Yun-su stared at Chu-jun and said, I'm afraid. I'm terrified. Chu-jun didn't feel anything wrong. He touched Yun-su's face. See, you know how powerful I am. Yun-su half-jokingly said, you are pretty powerful and made me feel restless. Chu-jun suddenly started feeling Yun-su up. Yun-su, what are you doing? Chu-jun grinned, I'm seeing if a tail has grown. Yun-su grabbed Chu-jun's restless hand. Do you like tails that much? Chu-jun nodded seriously. Tails are my favorite. It's a shame I don't have one now. Yun-su suddenly smiled. If you want a tail so much, perhaps if you cry a little, a fluffy tail will appear. The next second, Chu-jun started crying while hugging Yun-su. Wah, tail, my tail, please come back. Yun-su didn't let go of him. He whispered in Chu-jun's ear, keep crying, I want to see more tears. Chu-jun squeezed out a few tears. I'm crying, give me my fluffy tail. Yun-su felt he was faking. Chu-jun suddenly turned. You're a bully, and I'm going to smack you. Yun-su's eyes turned dangerous. The cold, alluring scent started to spread. Do you know what you're doing? You're playing with fire. Chu-jun was completely oblivious and kept smiling at Yun-su. Such an expression was a fatal temptation for Yun-su. You are playing with fire. The demon emperor's tail appeared. The alluring scent grew stronger. Chu-jun hugged Yun-su tighter. Cousin, you smell so good. Let me have a taste. In an instant, the alluring fragrance filled the air. Yun-su unconsciously closed his eyes. His inner obsession and reason were in conflict. Chu-jun continued to pet Yun-su's big, furry tail. Yun-su bit his tongue to stay awake, barely suppressing his inner demons. After retracting his tail, Yun-su sat up and looked at Chu-jun. You always manage to surprise me. You are so wild when you're drunk. A moment later, Yun-su took out a small box. From inside, he took out an earpiece. He gently put it on Chu-jun's ear. Looking at Chu-jun's familiar face, Yun-su thought, he Ching sure knows how to pick things. This earpiece is really good. Just as he was about to leave, Chu-jun grabbed his hand. He said dreamily, tail, my tail. Yun-su's heart softened. He gently tucked Chu-jun into the blanket. I'm afraid it's yours. Only after Chu-jun was fast asleep did Yun-su leave. But he thought to himself, was Chu-jun serious or just pretending? The next day, Chu-jun woke up looking confused. He looked around and realized that he was in Yun-su's room, on Yun-su's bed. He was about to speak, when he felt a pain in his throat. What did I do last night? Why does it hurt so much? Mumu looked at him with amusement. Master, you were crying and asking for a tail last night. You troubled little cousin. He was very patient. Chu-jun didn't remember anything. Crying and asking for a tail. Mumu described what happened in detail. Master, you were hugging his tail for a long time and exhausted him. He was pale when he left. Chu-jun held his head. I am such a troublemaker. A sudden knock on the door startled Chu-jun. Yun-su's voice came from outside. If you're awake, come out. Chu-jun awkwardly said, okay. While he spoke, he quickly ran his fingers through his hair. When he touched his ear, he realized that there was an earpiece. He then discovered something even more shocking. The colors of the world had returned to normal. When Chu-jun woke up, he saw the world had colors. He quickly ran to the mirror. He found the colors of his previously discolored hair had become normal. It must be because of this earpiece. He asked Mumu about the earpiece. Mumu said excitedly, little cousin gave it to you yesterday. I thought it was just a normal earpiece. I didn't expect it to not only hide the demon energy, but also let Master see colors again. Chu Jun felt something was off. He quickly ran to look for Yan Su. Yan Su was reading a book by a stone lamp. When he saw Chu Jun, he told him to change his clothes first. Chu Jun went over and hugged Yan Su. Don't move. Let me see your eyes. He suspected Yan Su had given him his color-changing power. He looked for a long time, but saw nothing. Chu Jun didn't believe it and pointed to a flower. What color is that? Yellow, Yan Su answered. Chu Jun opened his palm and asked him, what about this? Yan Su was still able to say the color accurately. After doing this several times, Yan Su answered correctly every time. Yan Su asked Chu Jun, do you think I gave you my color-changing power? Chu Jun took off the earpiece and asked, didn't you? This is just a normal earpiece, but the power on it is strong. Yan Su stubbornly said, why would I give you my color-changing power? It's just that your eye was annoying. After speaking, he turned and left. Chu Jun thought about it. He had no reason to do that. However, he still had doubts about the earpiece. Yan Su indifferently said, it's just an imitation. If you don't like it, throw it away. Chu Jun smiled. You're always so aloof. He still kept the earpiece. He chased after Yan Su. Is it pretty? Yan Su pursed his lips. Chu Jun bluntly exposed Yan Su. You're lying. You must think him very beautiful. I really like this gift. Thank you, little cousin. Yan Su's face suddenly turned red after being exposed. If you like it, good. After sitting down, Chu Jun talked about business. Before we figure out who the traitor is, I'm afraid we can't go to Jinyao Temple. Yan Su didn't care. He would give anything to Chu Jun, but he didn't say it. Chu Jun released the chubby doll from his sleeves. The chubby doll had been tormented by Meng in the sleeves. Chu Jun scolded, woman, you're terrible. Chu Jun shamelessly said, thank you. Now are you going to confess or keep resisting? He was poked several times. I'm the great demon king. Chu Jun said, I don't believe you. If you don't want to die, confess honestly. After being poked, he quickly admitted, I'll confess. Yan Su coldly glanced at him. If you talk more nonsense, I'll cut you. Mama earnestly explained, I am the link between this mountain gate and the Modi. I don't know who summoned me, but I was sealed as soon as I appeared. Chu Jun and Yan Su frowned. They both heard a strange word, Modi. What is that? Pang Wawa acted sincere, but his eyes revealed a hint of evil. Modi is where demons gather, like your human territory. Naturally, the Mod has its own land. This was the first time Chu Jun heard of it. He asked how many mods there were. Pang Wawa spread his hands. I'm just a child. How would I know so much? Chu Jun coldly sneered, a child. You used demon essence and magic manipulation on me. What an evil child. Pang Wawa sensed the danger in Chu Jun's words. He acted weak. I told you everything I know. I wouldn't dare to lie. Chu Jun asked sternly, who created this barrier? Pang Wawa blinked, saying he didn't know. I was sealed as soon as I was summoned. Chu Jun smirked, looks like I need to continue to pry. Pang Wawa pretended to cry. I told you everything I know, but in his heart, he cursed at the two. That woman and that fox aren't easy to deal with. Chu Jun didn't waste words. He threw him back into the dreamland. Give me your tricks, old lady. I've seen it all. In the dreamland, the three started discussing Pang Wawa. Mom and Dad, holding hands, roaming in the flower market, messing with South Return. But that poor child is calling out in someone else's territory. At the Yun residence, Chu Jun asked Pang Wawa 2 questions, and got some information. Though he didn't know where, Pang Wawa's words led him nowhere. Chu Jun threw him back into dreamland again. Moo and Pang Chu naturally wouldn't let him go. Chu Jun and Yan Su were drinking tea, and casually talking about Chu Yi, who and the demon emperor's deaths 1,000 years ago. Yan Su took a sip of tea. The way of heaven. Chu Jun looked up at the sky. Yes, heaven knows. Otherwise, why would that door be sealed? Chu Jun thought he died because of the Chu family's betrayal. Now it seemed the truth was more complicated. It was more exciting. Chu Jun said casually, it's a pity about the demon emperor. If he were still alive, I would want to end our feud. Yan Su seemed hesitant. Chu Yi who was unwilling. Chu Jun sneered, what a joke. First, she's an empress, then a victim. Two big fools. Yan Su's foot moved. In the next instant, Chu Jun and Jin Miao Huang returned. Chu Jun didn't know Yan Su was the demon emperor, but Yan Su knew the person before him was Chu Yihu. They looked at each other sadly. Chu Jun suddenly remembered, "Where's 1111? That old man said calmly, he should be in the side chamber." Old man and old woman didn't know their 1111 was crying with a toothache. It was worse that everyone at the table was eating, but he couldn't. My Fugue pitied him. "Oh, 1111. Poor baby, I prepared so much, but you can't eat. Let me eat more." 1111 cried louder, "You are bad. I'm going to find Ching Ching and ignore you." But when 1111 jumped off the chair, he accidentally fell. My Fugue was confused. "Who's Ching Ching?" Zix's forehead was red. He sat on the ground sulking. "Ching Ching is my good friend. He's very good to me." Looking at 1111, who was in a huff, my Fugue teased him. He picked him up. "Let's go see how yesterday's bones have been handled." 1111 said he didn't want to see the bones of dead people. A servant quickly reported, "Master, the bones were thrown into the soup pond." Master said if you bring back any garbage, he will break your head. My Fugue sighed. My unfilial son, what a bad heart. Ever since he had thrown the bones into the soup, my Shirang had nightmares. There was also a cat on the windowsill that came from nowhere, staring. Later, the cat jumped onto my Shirang's chest, making it hard for him to breathe. The black cat meowed at the window. A skull appeared on the windowsill. Creepy. Chu Jun took Yan Su to find Jiao Long. They were holding hands when they came in. Nanji respectfully greeted them. Chu Jun, acting familiar, came in. "Bring that newcomer here, and pick two handsome young men to serve my cousin." Nanji was welcoming, but worried for his master. Cousin Yan Su seems calm with Chu Yihu. Will they fight for power? He couldn't help but look at Yan Su's butt. "I can rest now. Yan Su doesn't have a tail." Chu Yihu will not wake up. Many people looked at Yan Su. What a beautiful man. If he chose someone, that person is lucky. Chu Jun loudly called Jiao Jiao. Jiao Long opened his eyes, ready to flirt with Chu Jun, but Chu Jun grabbed Jiao Long's neck. Behind them, Yan Su sighed in relief. Jiao Long's eyes widened. After seeing Yan Su, he instantly understood. "You're such a bully," he pouted. He took out a mirror and began fixing his hair. "You messed up my hair. It doesn't look good anymore." After seeing Yan Su in the mirror, Jiao Long became enthusiastic. "Oh, cousin is here too." Yan Su almost got goosebumps. He closed his mouth and didn't speak. Chu Jun secretly pulled Jiao Long aside. "Come here, I have something to tell you." When Jiao Long was confused, he suddenly got close to Chu Jun. He sensed something unusual. "This," Chu Jun put his head up. "Isn't it beautiful? My cousin gave it to me. Now I can see colors again. My right eye doesn't need to be hidden." Jiao Long said he was beautiful. He knew it was Yan Su's doing. He turned to Yan Su, "Thank you, cousin." When handsome guys flirt with each other, there's no limit to how much they can do. One second they were talking about foxes, the next second they were flirting. Chu Jun gave Jiao Long a hard time. Jiao Long saw Yan Su's fire. He turned to Yan Su. "Thank you, cousin." Yan Su was about to say no problem, but Jiao Long hugged him, pressed his hand on his chest and said, "My cousin is such a good man. You're cold outside but warm inside. I like you." Yan Su was shocked. He didn't know how to react to that. Jiao Long hugged Yan Su, rubbing his cheek against his neck. "I like you so much." Yan Su got goosebumps and backed away. "Don't be like that." Jiao Long thought he was offended. The crowd burst out laughing. Jiao, you're acting too much. Your cousin doesn't like that." Jiao Long poked Chu Jun's forehead. "Stop it. What do you want?" Chu Jun's purpose was simple. Today, she came to gain reputation, and to become known for her gentle seduction, so that she could walk the streets openly. She also wanted to take Jiao Long somewhere. Jiao Long was confused. "Where?" Chu Jun laughed mysteriously, "You'll know when you get there." As they walked, people stared at Chu Jun. Jiao Long reminded him, "Everyone's looking at you." Chu Jun was not afraid. They are jealous of me for having two handsome men. I'm lucky. He was indeed lucky, holding Jiao Long with his left hand, and he held Yan Su's hand with his right. Yan Su was surprised by Chu Jun's actions. But after being teased by Jiao Long, he felt like Han Nong wasn't what he had imagined. And that his relationship with Chu Jun wasn't what he thought. In a moment, they saw Mai Fugui waving at them. My little Chu, you're finally here. Mai Fugui gaped. You're a winner in life. Chu Jun shrugged, it's nothing. Want one of them? My Fugus eyes hesitated between Yan Su and Han Nong. After being stared at murderously by Chu Jun and Yan Su, he hid behind them. Your cousin is scary. He doesn't understand romance, I don't want him. He turned to Jiao Long. You look silly. Little one, let me help you inside. Jiao Long laughed, you're funny, I'm not old. Just call me Jiao. Mai Fugui was smitten. Jiao, come, let's go see my world. Jiao Long was polite, but was thinking that Mai Fugui was a fool. Chu Jun found it funny. She asked about Mai Fugui because the two were similar. It seems that Mai Fugui had learned well from his father. Chu Jun watched Jiao Long and Mai Fugui laughing. Yan Su's mind was on Chu Jun. He noticed that since they found Han Nong, Chu Jun's eyes hadn't stopped smiling. Yan Su asked Chu Jun, are you happy? Chu Jun smirked, I'm happy. He looked at Yan Su. What's wrong? Yan Su said, nothing. If you're happy, then I'm happy. He smiled at Chu Jun. It was the first time Chu Jun had seen Yan Su act cute and he blushed. He muttered, cousin, you're flirting. Yan Su didn't understand. Chu Jun leaned in and whispered into Yan Su's ear, flirting is what seduces people. Then, he laughed and walked forward. Yan Su was stunned for a second, then smiled. Some people are better at seduction than foxes. After entering Mai Fugus' room, the extravagance was obvious. As the unworldly prince, Mai Fugus' room was beyond imagination. Chu Jun marveled, now I know what it means to be rich. Jiao Long also looked shocked. The descendants of that evil being live so well. Feeling annoyed, Chu Jun touched a pillar. This is a whole piece of Huanghua Li wood. Jiao Long pulled out a container. Pure gold and jewels. What is so extravagant? Mai Fugui hugged him from behind. Xiaolong, you're holding my spittoon. The demoness had the urge to kill for the first time, just because the other was too rich. The hall was even more luxurious than the palace. The furniture was made of Huanghuali wood, pure gold and gems. The chamber pot. Jiao Long thought it was a decoration. Mai Fugui told him it was his chamber pot. Jiao Long looked at the chamber pot. It's ugly, Mai Fugui agreed. I think so too. He ordered his servants, take these ugly chamber pots and give them to the rabbits in the backyard to water the plants. Get jade ones instead, Jiao Long whispered to Chu Jun. That evil man didn't have any descendants. This kid isn't related to him. If we kill him, we won't offend our old friend. Chu Jun looked up, pain in her eyes. I've wanted to kill him for a long time. Yan Su looked at Chu Jun and Jiao Long, confused at their rich hatred. He thought about his son. Thank you. Mai Fugui said that 1111 had a toothache and went to find Da Ching Ching. Chu Jun and Yan Su were relieved. Yan Su knew he went to find He Ching, but Chu Jun didn't know. He told her he was going to a friend's place. Jiao Long was curious. The kid has a dad. What's his foxtail like? Chu Jun smiled, it's upturned. 12 in, 12 out. If there's a chance, it'll take you guys to dig in the dirt. Yan Su knew she was talking about He Ching, but didn't say anything. Jiao Long was interested, are there treasures? Chu Jun laughed, lots of big sheep, and they are good at hiding. Yan Su's face became cold. Chu Yihu, you're really good at this. Chu Jun hooked arms with Mai Fugui and headed to the backyard. Fugui, we've been thinking of Master Dan for a long time. Let's go ask him for a share of his money. Jiao Long called out to Yan Su. Cousin, let's go together. Mai Fugui walked as he spoke. Our Dan King loves crowds. People beg for his guidance. Chu Jun was curious. How do you know? My Fugue said seriously, it's written in our family history. The ancestor's last words were, let later generations offer him praise. He deserves all the praise in the world. The three old monsters were speechless. My Fugue saw the butler leading someone out. He asked, who's sick? The butler said, the master is unwell. My Fugue was surprised. My father. Didn't he go to the ministry? They said he took the day off and didn't go to court. He told us not to disturb you. My Fugue nodded, touched. My dad is so considerate. The three behind them were speechless again. Only 11 and Fugue acted like children. My Fugue bowed to the doctor. Sorry for the trouble. I'll see him later. Jiao Long asked, your dad isn't called my Fuchi, is he? My Fugue answered seriously, of course not. My dad's name is all four directions. My Dong, my Nan, my Shi, my Bei, my Zhong. Chu Jun was shocked. No way. Jiao Long and Yan Su laughed. After a while, they arrived at the Dan Wang Temple. They knew that my family was rich, but they were shocked. Is this a temple? My Fugue said proudly, this is my ancestor's temple. Isn't it impressive? Chu Jun and Jiao Long had the urge to kill. This is almost as big as the royal palace. Jiao Long was annoyed. That bastard used to borrow money from us to drink. Now he's richer than all of us combined. My Fugue impatiently pulled Chu Jun and Jiao Long inside. When they entered the temple, they were met with the image of a grumpy old man. My Fugue said proudly, this is the portrait of my ancestor, Alona. Chu Jun and Jiao Long's expression was indescribable. A fool, a fool, a fool, a fool, a fool, a fool. Chu Yihu, who was known for her charm, was drawn as a grumpy old man. It was said that Dan Shan was Chu Jun's alter ego. Seeing the portrait, she was stunned, especially since it was drawn by her old friend, my Renping. Jiao Long laughed, Dan Shan is so ugly. My Renping is still a bit talented. Chu Jun frowned. You call this talent? Yan Su was confused by their words, but he thought the two were very close. The more Jiao Long looked at the portrait, the louder he laughed. It's so ugly. I need to wash my eyes. My Fugue was unhappy. How can you talk like that? My great ancestor was very talented. Jiao Long laughed. Yeah, he was really talented. Yan Su suddenly said, Dan Shan should have been a woman. Chu Jun and Jiao Long were both stunned. Mumu said, how did you know? Only the old monsters know. My Fugue shook his head. Impossible. My family's ancestor drew it himself. He was Dan Shan's #1 fan. Chu Jun said angrily, that old man never listened to me. She took a deep breath and said, let's go outside. I need some air. She asked Jiao Long to pray to Dan Wang for her. Jiao Long and Yan Su followed him out. Their smiles were very weird. My Fugue muttered, don't worry, Dan Wang won't mind. If you don't pray to Dan Shan, you'll be punished. Jiao Long said, don't worry. Dan Shan won't punish you. After Chu Jun went outside, she was cursing my Renping in her heart. Seeing Yan Su, she smiled. Cousin, why are you out here? Yan Su sighed, I couldn't sleep well last night because of a drunk. I have been dizzy all day. I just wanted to get some air. Chu Jun curiously asked Yan Su how he knew that Dansheng Mountain was a woman. Have you seen her? Yan Su said that his people had met her. Chu Jun asked if that person was still alive. To which Yan Su admitted, no, they are not. It said that they once obtained Dansheng Mountain's elixir by chance. Chu Jun thought to himself, it seems that my cousin's owner has a good tale, otherwise, how could he have given me medicine? Yan Su looked into the distance, lost in old memories. When he succeeded as the demon emperor, no demon ancestor rebelled. Though he was successful in suppressing them, he was heavily injured. To heal, he went alone to the high shift for medical care, but there was no medicine to be found. As he was about to give up, someone suddenly touched his tail from behind. When he turned around, he saw a little girl. The girl, named Shanshan, said, I like your scent. And before leaving, she said, the next time we meet, I'll touch it again. Yan Su thought she was an unreasonable child, but the little troublemaker left him an elixir. This elixir not only healed his severe injuries, but also greatly increased his cultivation. By the time he realized that, the little girl named Shanshan was long gone. Yun Si said calmly, "It was because of this elixir that my clan member grew a sky-devouring tail and became a deity." Chu Jun smiled. "Danxing Shanshan is indeed a good person." Yun Si smiled gently at Chu Jun. He didn't tell Chu Jun that he was that Danxing Shanshan who touched the tail back then. Later, he heard that the demon race had a clan member named Shanshan, but her whereabouts were unknown. At this moment, a flustered servant rushed to find my Fugue. Chu Jun asked what was wrong. The servant said, "Master Mai is in trouble." My Fugue asked, "Is my dad's mental illness acting up again? Is Yu that useless?" The servant said, "Master's butt is fine, but his mind is not." Chu Jun and the others frowned. This family is crazy. They are not scared of the devil. My Fugue was still anxious. He told the servant to explain clearly what was going on, but the servant couldn't explain it, and asked him to see for himself. Moreover, Yunyi said this matter might need Jinyao Temple's intervention. Chu Jun and the others were immediately interested. "Let's go make some trouble." The servant led my Fugue and the others towards a side courtyard. Before entering, they could hear my Zhong shouting inside, "Come at me. Once you come, you can forget about leaving." When they saw the scene inside, they were shocked. My Zhong was wearing a kin robe, wielding a golden staff, chanting, "Heaven and earth are righteous. Demons cannot be allowed. I, my Zhong, am an upright man. Let the demons dare come and go as they please."